Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. The Quran has various parables in it. And the parable is basically a poetic or a beautiful correlation between concepts. A way to bring a metaphor that will help bring home an important meaning so you can see where the guidance is trying to take you. So today we're going to talk about the first parable of the Quran, which is about the hypocrites. Before that, we're going to talk about generally, which is also somewhat of a parable in itself, is the reality of them. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَ بِالْهُدَىٰ. The literal meaning, as you see here, is they have bought delusion in exchange for guidance. أُولَٰئِكَ literally means those people. It's the plural of ذَلِكَ, right? So you say هَذَا for something close, ذَلِكَ for something far when you're indicating it, this or that, right? So أُولَٰئِكَ are those people, right? So to say those are the ones who have bought, it sounds strange, doesn't it? It's long drawn out. So this is just another example, and we'll highlight these points where if you try to bring Arabic into English, it will always kind of seem weird and it won't click to the English speaking mind, right? That's where you're going to see a lot of the translations of Quran or other books that you may have read. It kind of seemed hard to follow. You know, you're like, what's being said here and why, if you're reading an English translation. And as I've said before, the idea that some people have is we have to honor the original Arabic, right? And so they feel inclined that even if it may not sound, or maybe they don't know, because maybe they're not an original English speaker themselves, so maybe it seems to follow something that they would say. To truly honor the Arabic is to try to bring what meanings are there in the most clearest way possible so that the reader in English will benefit from it. So Alladhina is always a adjective that is saying those who, right? The ones who, right? You say alladhi, the one who, right? So after it is going to give a sentence that clarifies something about the person or the thing that was mentioned before it. Always. Alladhi or alladhina. That's the plural of that. Allati and allati, right? You'll see these words come up almost every page of the Quran, right? So I'm just giving you a little common vocabulary. Ishtaraw, it means to buy. Like if you go to the store, ashtari aghradi, right? I buy my things at the store, right? I buy groceries, right? And then ad-dalala is the opposite of guidance. To be guided is to know the path that you're doing, you know where you're going, you know how to get there, it's very clear to you and you're following that. Dalala is where you've lost your instructions. You don't know what you're doing. You have no idea where you're going to go and how to get there or whatever, right? And bil huda is the transaction here that's being made. They're buying misguidance for the price of, right, guidance in exchange for, right? So the commentary is saying that they sold guidance for the supposed benefits of disbelief. So we're talking about hypocrites. So the idea of a hypocrite is, we have to understand there's more than one kind of hypocrite, right? So there's the hypocrite that has an actual issue in their beliefs, right? Someone who does not believe in Islam in their heart, but they're acting as a believer in front of people because they feel like they're going to get some benefit, right? So in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the people of Medina, when they saw so many people coming into Islam, right? At that point they thought, well, you know, now the power structure, the community is moving towards this man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his religion and the holy book that he came with. So, in order to keep peace for ourselves, since now the majority of our tribes and the heads of our tribes, now they're following this, we're going to act like we're following that, right? So what they're thinking is, in the short term, I'm going to be able to marry the women, I'm going to be able to get zakat if I'm struggling financially, I'm going to be able to benefit from the reality of the Muslims, right? And so that's basically the idea here, that they are sticking to that. In the long term, as we'll see, they basically think that this new religion is a fad, right? So they left faith which was given to them innately. Everybody know what innately means?
Inside.
Yeah, it's like something built in, right? Something like you're born with it, right? We call it fitra, right? This is innate faith, innate knowledge of God, inherent, something born within you, right? So we're all kind of inclined to, one of the young men asked me one time when we were talking about the generality of faith, and he said, well, I didn't choose to have to be responsible for my deeds and all that. So then I asked him, would you rather have not been created, or would you rather have been a plant? And the answer is no. You're very happy to have this luxury that you have, right? So it's an interesting conundrum because people try to escape their responsibility, but at the same time, they want it. They want to own this consciousness, this awareness, this control over what I can do and who I am and what I have the ability to do and earn and so forth, right? So that comes with responsibility, right? That comes with accountability. It's always that way. When someone gives you something, you're entrusted with it, right? So the idea here is that God, whenever He creates your soul, whose soul is it?
It's His.
It's His soul, right? He's giving it to you. He's saying, look, here it is. Am I your Lord?
You should answer yes.
And then every single soul, before it goes into its mother's womb, it says, of course, I bear witness. So the Shahada is something all beings, all human beings, have done before they actually were in their mother's womb, right? That is why the vast majority of people throughout history is declining now because people's arrogance about knowledge and technology, they feel self-sufficient. But throughout the world, even till now, 90 percentile plus believe in a supreme being, a creative force in the universe that has absolute control and authority, and it's obviously an intelligent reality. That's why it's not just a bunch of floating particles. That's why it's a very structured, complex system of life that we're seeing around us, right? That we're part of. So, belief now is brought to people in their life through prophethood, right? The clarity of what's already mystically, basically there inside you. Then these prophets come, right? And these prophets, they prove who they are because people know the laws of nature. We know if you throw a guy in a pit of fire, what's going to happen to him? He's going to what?
Get burned.
He'll be burned to a crisp, right? So when the guy comes out, walking out of the fire pit, and he's all good, and he's been telling you God, the creator of the universe, the one who created that sun and that moon and those stars, He's the one sent me. Now what do you feel about him after that? Exactly. So whenever the people are like, no, here comes the army of Pharaoh. What are we going to do? Right? And then he says, no, my Lord is with me. And then boom, the sea opens up and everybody just goes through. Is that normal? Is that David Blaine kind of stuff? No, I can guarantee you right now, I'm going to put my whole life savings and everything that I am and could be, that David Blaine will never cause the sea to open up and everybody walk through it, right? And the same thing is true with Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Things that cannot be done by magic. And then what was their response to all of this? Right? This is magic, right? When the Prophet said, look at the moon. They're looking at a nice big full moon over the top of the mountain. And then it just splits in half and goes very wide apart and stays that way for a few moments. And then it comes back. They said, you're doing magic, right? I don't know of any magician going to do that for you, right? This is beyond the work of magicians. So now the faith has come with these prophets. The clarity of purpose of who we are, beings of awareness, of conscious moral awareness of cause and effect, of the moral implications of action, right? So then the guidance is coming saying, do this, do that, and do this, and that will protect you from an immoral lifestyle. Don't do this, don't do that, and don't do this, and that will protect you. See, here's what happens. Nowadays, a lot of people look at religion as just a bunch of rules and things you have to believe in order to be part of the such and such religion, right? No, it's a system. I can guarantee you in another talk some other time, we should have it, I usually do this with particularly the teenage crowd. Because they're like, why? Why can't we do this? Why we have all my friends and all of that, you know? They're worshiping friends. They don't get it. They don't know that that's what they're doing. But in their mind, my friends know what's up. They're morally, mashallah. They should know. Look at what they're doing, right? So we stick with scripture because it came from the prophets who did the miracles, whose character and impact upon the world was of moral highness, was of moral high ground, and it caused people to become better people, right? And we see now society's going down the tubes, so we're not going to go along with what people are saying and how they're doing as our example. The hypocrites, that's exactly what they were saying. Are you with me? Here's what they were saying. They were saying, okay, some people are pretty passionate about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we are Arab. We are polytheists. We have a pagan lifestyle. We have been doing this for centuries, right? Surely those Quraysh are not happy with this. That's why they all had to come here. Quraysh are a very powerful clan. He just announced himself to the local Jewish tribes. They are a very influential economic force in the region. If those two are together against him, probably we don't foresee a good future for this newfound faith. So let's go along with it while it's here in the open and see what we can benefit from being around it. And let's work with these Jews and these other Arab tribes who are remaining very strongly oppositional against Islam, pagan and polytheistic, right? And so that's basically, they're thinking this religion will die out. I can tell you the exact same thing happened with me. In 1999, when I started being a Muslim and I embraced Islam and trying to change my lifestyle according to this Quran, my family was saying, oh, you know, it's good, you know, John, he's trying to do something religious in his life, you know, and, you know, hopefully he's, you know, gets to be a better person. The next year, you know, oh, wow, you know, he's you know, he doesn't use foul language anymore. He visits his parents often, you know. They started to see it, and they're happy to see because I did not have a good way, I didn't have a good example before I was Muslim. Then, after pretty much I've got my things together, then it was like, okay, now, you know, you're a good guy now. Why are you going to stick with this crazy exotic religion, right? And I was like, because it's not a crazy exotic religion. You got to study it, right? See, that's the power of culture. I had a lady ask me the other day, you know, she says, I was doing a training for people who work at hospitals to be sensitive to Muslims and so forth. And she says, you know, you're giving this talk about this Muhammad. If you have Jesus Christ, why would you ever need a guy named Muhammad? And I was like, this lady's got to be in her 80s, okay? She's just an old lady. She's been born and raised in Oklahoma, you know, not down here in the Midwest. And that's all she knows. So I said, man, I'm assuming that, you know, you've been born and raised here in Oklahoma or somewhere around the bounds. She said, yeah. I said, imagine you were born in Calcutta, in India. December 25th would have never been a big deal. Ever. It wouldn't have meant anything. You would not see crosses all over the place. Jesus Christ would mean nothing to you. Ponder over that. It's the power of culture. It tries to pressure you to think that whatever is normal or commonplace around you should define who you are. And Islam says we should be the strangers. The Prophet ﷺ and his true companions, their example was, we looked into the truth of the message that's already built in our hearts. We looked into the person it came with. We're willing to go through the most difficult times and circumstances because we know that's what's best for our soul, because we're trying to fit in with whom? Allah. We're trying to fit in with God, right? We want to be close to the creator of the universe, even if it means that everybody on earth is not comfortable with us, right? And so that's the reality that those companions were on. The people who, many of them in Medina, they saw it as, I need to fit in with some of the economic interests I have with these Jewish tribes, and I'm not sure that this religion will last out. So are they really looking deeply into the proofs and into their heart, or are they looking into worldly interests?
Worldly interest.
You see what we're dealing with right now? And that's the basis of hypocrisy, is that you're very aware of guidance and prophethood, but because of some idea of fitting in with some worldly structure, you're willing to give up and not take in the faith and own it. You're just going to give it away for these worldly interests. So they've made the worst deal. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. Right? Literally, so their transaction did not profit them and they were not guided. Right? Fa means so. After you say something and you want to say, and here's what happened right after that. Right? مَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ. Their business dealing did not make any money. It did not benefit. It did not profit. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. And they were not guided.
I think we could use
No, it's okay. Okay, does anybody not hear me? Is anybody here having a hard time hearing me? Okay, I think we're okay. Jazakallah khair, though. You get the hasanat for wanting to help. Alhamdulillah. So basically, at the time of migrations, Muslims seem to be weak. And they have this opposition. I think I jumped ahead. I think we went over this point, is it? So people were saying, yeah, those Muslims, there's a lot of people against them. Look at this. Say, let's flip the script. Say the Muslims get defeated. Say the Muslims get defeated. If I was truly known to be solely devoted to that cause, what's going to happen to me? You see? That's how some hypocrites are thinking. So let me keep some very strong bonds on the side with the power structure that was. And who was the head of the hypocrites in Medina? Abdullah ibn Ubay as-Salul, who was expected to become nominated as the king or as the ruler of Yathrib, because he had kind of helped to die down some of the skirmishes between the two big tribes of Aus and Khazraj. He had tried to, and he did it by saying, look, we have interests here with our neighbors and so forth. If we're fighting, they're going to use that against us. So we need to have strength in our unity. So once the people started following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of a true, sincere searching of faith, that's why they were willing to do that. Do you think that some of these people who went to Mecca to embrace some Qurayshi guy who's calling himself a prophet, do you think they had anything to gain in this world from that? Actually, they were expecting to deal with problems, but they were solid in their sincerity, seeking truth of what this message is and where it came from, and what that means to their eternal reality. Versus, well, what kind of deals I have in this world and how come I'm going to make some money and so forth, right? So they thought that it was a fad. This religion is going to die out. We need to keep our strong bonds alive. And so let's go around people telling them that we're willing with them. But at the same time, let's stay among the Muslims and maybe we can help out as spies, which is what they were doing, bringing information. There was a well-known Jewish man named Ka'b ibn Ashraf, who he was working a plot to stop Islam and to get rid of it, right? So when the Muslims had found out that he was doing this and he was actually actively turning so many people corrupt, some people say, oh, well, this is terrible. The Prophet Muhammad agreed upon an assassination, right? What really happened was the Muslims have already made a treaty or a constitutional declaration with the Jews in the area. This has already happened. And Ka'b ibn Ashraf's tribe and his the authority over him have signed into that we're all here working together, right? And so the Prophet made a wise decision that if some people that we don't know exactly who did brought the justice to him as a traitor, as treason to the state that he had signed on to, it would be a much better thing than to try to go, capture him, because they don't have a system of imprisonment and police. That all has not been formed yet. Arabs were a very tribal, anarchist kind of society. So they're still working on developing the infrastructure of how to deal with crime, right? So back then, that was seen as a way to deal with it. And because of the injustice and treachery that this man was doing, when he was called to, when the three Muslims said, we will go stop him, then he approved of it. But it was based upon treason to the state that he had already signed off on, right? So the anti-Islam movement will take this and say, look, Prophet Muhammad is assassinating people in his land just because they don't like him. No. He is literally turning people against each other and plotting with others to basically destroy the power structure of the state that had just now brought everybody together as Abdullah ibn Ubay as-Salul was trying to do. Effectively it was done. Because Islam came to stop tribalism, which is the number one figure point of political and social interaction, which was keeping things, awry, right? Is that this? Okay. So look here. The verses seems to be talking about the hereafter, right? It seems to be saying when they die, they will have in this life acted like Muslims fakely, right? Falsely. I don't know, is fakely a word? Sarah Palin, put it in the dictionary. Fakely, they were fakely doing it. So falsely, and so in the hereafter, they will benefit nothing from their claims to faith and even the prayers they prayed and all of that, right? Because it's all a scam, right? But in fact, in this world, because guess what happened? And this is a miracle in and of itself. It is perfectly rational thought, 14 centuries ago in Arabia, to say some new religion that goes against the fabric of our culture and beliefs for 1,000 years, right? Thousands of years, okay? It's not going to last. It's going to be destroyed. It's going to die out, right? Like Scientology right now. Just kidding. It's some ridiculous new thing. It's very natural to think like that, right? But guess what happened? 14 centuries down the line, what's going on over there in Medina? Islam became the stronghold. It actually became a formidable state that was ruling and governing a third of the known civilized world for 8 centuries. Do you think all those hypocrites were thinking that was going to happen? That would happen?
No.
For sure, no. Now let me ask you a question. Will Islam return back to a place of dignity where people say, wow, the Muslim lands are a great place of spiritual, moral, intellectual contribution and growth and development, that we should all learn from them, and we should go learn the sciences and the things they're coming up with, and look at their moral system of justice and their code of law? Do you think that could happen again? Right now. Don't let hypocrisy get to you. You see what I'm doing right now? Hope is a very fundamental quality of a Muslim. Not because we say so in a hokey, blind faith way. It happened in history. We're talking about it. Inna Allaha ma'al ladhina amanu wa'amilu salihat. Right? Allah is with us. الَّذِينَ إِن مَّكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمَرُوا. We're not doing any of that. So we don't have strength in the world. And trust me, the very thing you're watching is an attempt to try to exploit the ignorance, the poverty, the war-torn societies that Muslims live in, knowing that there is a very good freedom fighter concept of seeking justice when you're in the dumps and hoping God will bring you through it, to make everybody believe that ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, Shabab, that this is what you will see if some Islamic state comes around. No, it is not. Probably if you watch the development and the growth of Turkey, you will see That's probably the more better model. Slowly taking people from Jahiliyyah and bringing them into a moral system that people, now you can start to see what's really going on over there behind the scenes. We don't like that one too, because now Europe begging them to come in. Europe really wants them, right? Because the Turkish economy is better than all but 2 states in Europe, right? This is the reality by an Islamist over the last 10 years, right? So that's basically the conundrum or the dichotomy we find ourselves in right now, is that there's an ironic, it's not really that way, it's this way, but if we look at history, we'll see it. If you haven't read this history, I highly encourage you to do it, because you will see that for some time, for like 7 centuries, 8 centuries, people would travel to Spain, Baghdad, Egypt, Morocco, India, Persia, for the purpose of learning the worldly sciences. People from Europe and Asia and Africa would go and learn Arabic because the people who speak Arabic in their state are the ones producing, contributing, building, growing. When we say all these terms, not a religion, a civilization, a human development, right? That's better for human beings across, whether you choose to follow the theological concepts or not, the moral, ethical, intellectual points that they stand on are something desirable for anyone, right? So that's basically that. Now we get into a very interesting, unique parable that kind of goes deep. We don't want to get too lost because, unfortunately, on this one, we're going to be at the hands of some linguistic interpreters and different angles that they took. One thing that you should know about tafsir. Tafsir is not some sort of set, final reality of truth. It is a human attempt. Unless the ayah says, because of this other ayah, Majid, do you have that in your hand? Can you please turn it off? It's really unfortunate I had to tell you that. Yeah. So, I've lost my train of thought. Completely.
Tafsir.
Tafsir.
Is it not a set rule? I mean,
Yeah.
you might differ.
Unless the ayah says, this other ayah clarifies this point about this ayah, you know. Or it says, this authentic hadith found in Bukhari or Muslim or Tirmidhi that all the scholars agree on, now you know. But when it says, so-and-so said from the Sahaba or the Tabi'een or so-and-so, I will tell you, I've come to notice some people in my interactions that want to make so-and-so who is a pious, righteous person, that we're all very inferior from a moral lifestyle standpoint. It is still his opinion or her opinion, right? It is not a divine truth. It is an attempt at a spiritual person of knowledge and wisdom who is really tapped into the generality of Quran and Sunnah and the teachings of Islam, right? And they're trying to give you the best that they can, right? So that's what we're going to find on this one, because there is no ayah or hadith that tells you exactly what the nature of this parable is, okay? So please forgive me if it seems polemic, like linguistic word games, right? Or shots in the dark, right? It's interesting, shots in the dark. مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون. Right? So مثلهم, their example, right? Their parable. كمثل الذي is like the parable of. So you could say their example or their parable is like the parable of the one who. Or you could just say, they are like a people. You see what I'm saying? You see how one seems like so much talk, and it seems like, in Arabic, it's pure eloquence and it flows beautifully. In English, it seems like a whole lot of extra talk, right? That's just the difference, right? So, they are like a people who have kindled a fire. When it lights up all around them, God takes away their light, leaving them in darkness where they cannot see. Deaf, dumb, and blind, they do not return, or they don't return. So this is the parable of the hypocrite dealing with guidance, is what it's about. How the hypocrite in relation to guidance is, right? So, for those of you that know Arabic, you might be wondering, why does it say مَثَلُهُ right here? And then it says كَمَثَلِ الَّذِي, which is singular. So that's plural, that's singular. استوقد, singular. نارا, right? فَلَمَّا أَضَاعَتْ مَا حَوْلَهُ, singular. Then it says ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِمْ, right? In Arabic we have something called ism jins, right? So when you say Moza or Mose, you can say Mose and you have one, right? But it comes from the family of bananas, right? So that's basically, when you say insan, you could mean one, or you could mean pretty much the generality of all human beings, right? In later after that, they developed the term insaniya, al-intisab, to refer to that concept. But in the Quran, it always just says al-insan. Khalaq al-insan. Doesn't mean one person.
No.
It means all of us, right? Yeah. So nas is the plural of insan. Literally unas, but that's another linguistic thing. So basically, the lighting of the fire is like their open claims to faith. So what we're talking about here, according to one attempt at translating the meanings of this, is like they're lighting a fire. It's like, oh, I'm a believer, I'm a Muslim. They come to the mosque, they prayed with the Muslims, right? So that fire is something that benefits, right? So they're seeing goodness, they're seeing good people, good manners, they're connecting to God in some sort of a superficial way, right? Then when they leave that, what happens? All of the benefit of that fire goes away, right? So the believer would be like the one who, when they're in the mosque, when they're out of the mosque and all of that, even though their faith may go up and down a little bit, the benefits are all there. The means to the spiritual truth and conviction is there, and the means to make things better is there. But they're doing this for show. So it's not real. It doesn't have any real benefit, right? So whenever it says God takes away their light, what it means is, it's just like when we talked about the parable of, or the truth of, a veil being put over the eyes and the ears and the hearts of the disbelievers. It doesn't make sense that someone has chosen their heart and they say, I'm a disbeliever, I don't believe in Islam. That Allah will just uncover the beautiful, vast truths of faith and revelation to that person. Why would they do that? Why would He do that? They've chosen disbelief, right? Once they've chosen disbelief, it's going to all seem ridiculous, boring, stupid, I don't know, I don't get it, that's old stuff, the way they talk, what they're doing, why they do all those rituals. They're going to talk like this. It's just a bunch of stuff that some people did that I don't agree with, right? But once their heart says, well, I'm looking for the truth. God, if you're there, guide my heart, right? When the heart takes that route, then they'll be reading it and they'll be like, wow, subhanAllah. You know, they'll just be like, they'll be soaking it up. They'll be feeling it, right? So the way it was with the hypocrites is, they chose to build this fire, not that the fire is there perpetually by Allah's blessing, right? They built it up. Then whenever they leave, that fire completely goes away and there's absolutely no benefit from it. So they go with people saying, yeah, we're with you, those Muslims are stupid, those are fools. Remember? Kama amana sufaha, right? Those foolish people over there believing in that religion, you know, what's wrong with them, right? You will get people like this, right? Then Allah taking it away, you know, it's like when they benefit from it in this life, they will lose it in the hereafter as well. That's one of the ideas. Is that maybe in this life, every time they came to the mosque and everything, maybe they married a good Muslim girl, maybe they got a good Muslim business deal from some sincere brother who was like, oh, this is my Muslim brother, I'm going to help him out. And maybe they were protected because Islam did end up becoming, you know, the powerful, authoritative force in the region. So they went through their whole life, and then when they die, all those benefits will go away, and now they'll be facing spiritual judgment. So they were gaining worldly judgment where they were, and now they will be losing that, right? Others noted they were in the dark, light up the fire, and then the fire went out, and they were lost, right? So that's basically referring to a people who believed upon the Prophet's arrival, and then they engaged in hypocrisy. So this is the other angle, is that there's a lot of scholars who said there are people who, when they first heard about the Prophet and they first met him, they were actually moved to faith. And they're like, wow, look at this guy, he's an amazing person, listen to this Quran. This is not the word of any poet that we know of. This is clearly some lofty speech about moral character and purpose of life that we've never heard before, right? But then slowly but surely, through the hypocrites, through the Jewish plots, through traveling and meeting with the Quraysh, maybe after the Battle of Uhud, right? We saw the Muslims got defeated. So then they went to hypocrisy, right? And so then they went, and the Quran talks about this nature, is that الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ كَفَرُوا ثُمَّ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ ازْدَادُوا كُفْرًا لَمْ يَكُنِ اللَّهُ لِيَغْفِرَ لَهُمْ وَلَا لِيَهْدِيَهُمْ سَبِيلًا. So that some people will just embrace faith and then they leave it, and they embrace it and they leave it. This is a point of hypocrisy. It's one thing to say, as all normal humans will be. I've gotten in trouble for saying this before. Every person will doubt things about faith. If you don't, I think you're a liar. Every person will hear something, look at the state of Muslims, be constantly bombarded with reading something in the Quran that their mind, their own personal philosophical thinking, what their cultural emphasis around them was telling them their whole life is normal and acceptable. And they'll be like, I don't know, That doesn't mean you become a disbeliever. You're just having a doubt, right? There are things called foundations in religion, and then there are things called branches, right? Every single time I've ever doubted, it was always in a branch, some detail that is related to a practice or an action that's not like a fundamental belief as a Muslim. It's not a fundamental worship system. Like I never thought, I don't know, 5 prayers, why? No, prayer has helped me structure my life and took me out of all kind of a sinful way of lifestyle and thought process, because I always have God within the next 2 hours, and He was just there an hour or so ago. And it's, how can you get involved in a very sinful lifestyle, doing very bad sins, right? If that's what you're doing every day, right? You can't. It's impossible, right? And so, those foundations of faith and belief and worship and the purpose of the law and the general understandings of why, like for sure, whenever I was a new Muslim, if somebody steals this much, we're going to chop off their hand, right? So Quran says that very clearly, right? As American culture has taught me my whole life, that is cruel and unusual punishment, right? But I can guarantee you, I know people who went in and out of prisons for stealing. And almost every time those characters came out of jail, it's like, oh man, I met Tyrone up in the joint, man. We got this plan, we fixing to do X, Y, and Z. Now, jails in America are breeding grounds for more serious criminal behavior. They get hardened in a violent way while they're there for protecting themselves in such an environment. And then they form plots and buddies and pals with those people. And usually they come out a couple of years, 2, 3 years, 4 years later. And now society won't accept them because they have a felony on their thing. And they have really no way it means to get a good job. Educationally, people don't want them, right? So then they form new life. If people knew, if you steal that car, your hand will be chopped off. I guarantee you. Fact of the matter is, they will think 10 times more than they would if they thought they were going to go do 3 years in jail for it. Where the society will pay all their bills. I used to know a guy from Jahiliyyah that he went struggling one time. He wasn't on his come up, meaning I'm not making my money as I would. So he's like, I'm just going to go to the joint in a little bit. Like he's literally planning to do a crime so he'll go to jail so he has free everything. He's like, I get to work out. I have a gym membership every day, right? 3 meals a day taken care of for me, right? And I'll get to meet some people who have all the connections. I'm telling you the real story of our prison system, right? It is perpetuating and growing crime. That's what it does, right? And it's a big system of multi-billion-dollar industry. Are you guys aware that most of the prisons in America are privatized for-profit industry?
Yes.
You would have only known that from one politician, Bernie Sanders, right? I'm crying. Bernie, we just want you back. Inshallah, it's us. It's not him. He just was that audacious politician that came out and just started saying things like openly that no other politician, because that's how they stay in politics. In Vermont, you can get away with it. Back to the hypocrisy. Okay? So, they're saying that if you're around faith sometimes and then you leave it, being around disbelievers, then you're affected or infected by your environment. That's how hypocrisy comes to some people. Bottom line is, if you're around people who don't like Islam, right? It says, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ الَّذِينَ يَخُوضُونَ فِي آيَاتِنَا فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ, right? حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِ. If you're around people who are saying, yeah, Islam is no good, you know, the Islam terrorism, Prophet Muhammad is this and that and the other, and all that, you're going on chat rooms, you're on your friend, you're talking to feminists, acting like that, you should not stay in that setting. You should say, what you're talking about is a disgrace to truth that is well founded in history, okay? It's not just a claim in a book. It's a history, right? So I'm going to leave until you choose to talk in a more respectful manner. That's it. But if you hang around with them and try to make friends with them and try to fit in with them, you will start to have hypocrisy in your heart. They will infect you with this deep-rooted doubts, and you'll start to think, yeah, man, you know, look, ISIS and all of that. Even though all the scholars of the world outside of Syria and Iraq are saying ISIS is a heretical, blasphemous group of people that are a cancer to society, right? As Bennett would claim, all we are, right? That is what ISIS is. That's what we know from the scriptural evidence and proof. Just because they're calling themselves Islamic State and growing beards and going around saying they're fighting for Islam does not mean anything, right? I always give this parable whenever I was in, because I was teaching a group of, it's called Ali, it's an older living life enhancement or something like this. OSU provides it for people who would like to keep educating themselves in more of a structured environment. So the poor lady said, look, we've been seeing Al-Qaeda and ISIS now, and she said, they're saying Islam. They're saying Islam. Islam made me do it. It's not culture, it's not anything, it's not, you're saying socioeconomic. I said, let me show you. Imagine there's a village in Chile or Peru or somewhere, right? And they don't have television there, right? But they have heard of America, right? And for sure they've heard of Barack Obama, right? Imagine I go in there and I'm like, guys, I come in a limousine, I come out of there with my nice suit and tie, my little American flag pin, and I start telling everybody, I'm Barack Obama, right? And I start talking, they've never seen Barack Obama. They don't know who he is, they don't know what he looks like, they don't know what it is, but I'm coming, everybody around me is saying that's Barack Obama. Like, I have an entourage. What will they think about me? I'm Barack Obama, right? That's exactly what's going on. Imposters, right? We don't know what they're talking about, right? But people are trying to authenticate them who are not Muslim. There's no Muslims authenticating ISIS. It's just a bunch of strange intellectuals and people, and it's left and right, by the way, now. There was a famous article at The Atlantic, which is a very liberal, left-wing Democrat website. ISIS is just re-establishing what was always there from Prophet Muhammad and the people who followed him. That's the way they present it, right? It was like 6 pages long. Yeah. Be careful, guys. The situation is getting worse. The next verse, أو كصيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر. So basically what we have here is, it's a parable of a storm. So the way the hypocrites are regarding faith, their metaphor about faith is like one who's in the middle of a storm and the thunder and the lightning, and they're just like, I'm gonna die. Death is immediate. This huge storm with all this lightning and thunder and rain, right? So basically, or like a people in a storm pouring rain, filled with darkness, thunder and lightning. So they plug their ears with their fingers, anticipating thunderclaps, fearing imminent death. Here's another point about Arabic and English. If I say they plug their ears, do I need to say with their fingers? Well, how are they plugging their ears? Like, you probably understand it, right? But that's how it says. It's called itnab. It's exaggerating how, like they thought like they were gonna put their, just like to complete, if the visual of it, of the linguistic in Arabic is just like exaggerated to make the point how hard they're trying to do not to hear this dangerous thunder, right? Fearing imminent death. God surrounds the disbelievers, right?
So Azanihim means?
Ears.
Ears. Udhun. Adhan, plural, right? Adhan, listen, adhan, adhan. So one has a couple alifs in the front, the other one doesn't. So that's the call to prayer, right? Yeah. So basically, it is like a people who are traveling and find themselves in such a situation versus those who have a home. So some scholars, they looked at this and said, look, if you're a believer, particularly in the desert, remember the way that people think who are getting this revelation first, right? You're in the desert. Say you have a home and you're all safe there, and the storm comes. What are you thinking? Crops. This is awesome. Look at this beautiful storm. We're fixing to have, palm trees and other things, and bushes are gonna grow, and the sheep can eat, and the goats can eat, and the camels can eat, right? Storm's a good thing because they're at home where they're at, and they need this, and they see the benefits of it. So that's the guidance for them, is like this storm, you see. But the one who's not at home in the guidance, you see the hypocrite, that person's not at home. They're traveling through in the guidance, right? And so now it's like, oh no, look at all this and that. So the hypocrites were waiting to see something bad happen from the Quran, from the Muslims, something, to prove that it's not real, right? Or that it's not right. And they were waiting to see it downfall. And then what really started to get to them, so as we see here, a storm is a beneficial thing, but it can be very scary for some. The hypocrites are surrounded with what they believe is harmful because they are not at home while dealing with it. Let's see if this is the one. Other scholars, I didn't put one of them. One of them is an interesting one. One of the angles is like this. Life, life is going to bring trials. So the storm is like life, and then the way you deal with life is like the believer, right? How your attitude is towards it, right? And so guidance will give you that. So if you're in a storm, right, and you understand the nature of the storm, and you know how to get safe and all of that, and you're going to see the benefit of it, will it be scary to you? No. But if you're just one of those people who just are scared of a storm, and you don't understand it, you've never been in a storm before, you're out there in the open, it's just all this lightning, you're thinking I might get hit by lightning, even though technically, unless you live in Florida, which has 7 times more human lightning hits than any other place on planet Earth, you're probably not going to get hit by lightning, right? You're more, possible to get in your car as you are leaving today and get in a crash over there, right? And get very badly injured or killed, right? That's the more probable thing than if you're in a storm, getting hit by lightning, right? So the idea is that the storm represents what life brings to you, and the guidance is how you get through it, right? So if you just stand there in a storm like this and you're in Florida, probably not a good idea to just stand there probably a good idea to go find your way to some safe place, indoors or something, right? Rather than going, oh no, I'm gonna die, right? Yeah. So that's one of the other angles that they brought. So in this one, يَكَادُ الْبَرْقُ يَخْطَفُ أَبْصَارَهُم. The lightning almost snatches away their sight. Whenever it flashes, they walk along, and when darkness returns, they stand still. If God willed, He would have taken their hearing and sight. God is powerful. Really, God is all powerful over everything, right? Some of the scholars have said that this lightning and thunder represent the power of revelation and the miracles of the prophet. The believers are in awe, while the disbelievers are scared and bothered. What's being said here is, the lightning and the thunder is like the power of the Quran hitting Arabia. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If the Quran is revealed just on a mountain, you will see it shaking and trembling to break apart and crumble. Right? So the Quran is just hitting Arabia. When I say it's hitting Arabia, People's whole lives are changing. Whole tribes are completely transforming from polytheistic to monotheistic. From alcohol and prostitution to sobriety and chastity and modesty. From gambling and superstition to economic sense and reason and understanding God. His will is supreme. Everything has a plan and a divine order of things. Everything is transforming in drastic means. Right? So the hypocrites are just waiting. They've got their fingers crossed for this new religion to go away so they can go back to the way things were and everything can be comfortable and all these huge changes, these huge lightning bolts of change and the thunderclaps that come with it. But guess what kept happening? The battles would happen, the Muslims would be victorious. The ayahs would come, more people would become Muslim. The Prophet would go, more people would embrace him. Right? So Islam keeps growing and being successful, and the ayahs keep bringing such great impact of good and positivity to the growth of the Arab people. And these people are like, man, want to just go away, right? So they're blinded by it. Then other scholars said basically, when they're around revelation, they are able to move with guidance in their environment, as we said before on the other one. When they're removed, they don't go anywhere spiritual. Right? So when the lightning comes and they see it and they're around it and they're in the mosque and they're around Muslims, the lightning is like an eye of the Quran. So now they can see. So it's dark outside. That lightning, now they can see where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to get there. Right? When then the lightning stops, right? And then they just stop. Well, what do I do? I don't know. Which means when they leave the mosque and they start going back to the people who are corrupt and not following Islam. And I think that about covers it. Any questions? Pretty intense. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, may Allah bless us all.